when people think of the Pacific Northwest, they think of everybody together, everybody just hippies up there.
Right. Yeah, no, there's some stuff you gotta watch out for.
Yeah,
I was
definitely, definitely. But Miss Summer, where are you from?
So, dad was in the military. I was raised in St. Croix, the Virgin Islands. And I'm originally from New York. My parents are from the Bronx. And raised in St. Croix, Virgin Islands. And then he retired in Virginia Beach. So that's where I met my husband. And then I never heard of Manassas, Virginia at all. I'd never heard of that until um, later on in life. But yeah, I'm originally from New York.
Okay, okay. You were born in New York or lived a little bit there. Trust me, we you're talking to a real one. Because I was actually born in the Bronx, Morrisania Hospital, 1966. My parents used to tell me the story of how my father and I did the same thing he did when I had my son. I was out playing football. Well, I was hanging out. He was playing football, and my mother's water broke. My aunt ran down the block. Now these are basically teenagers. My mother had just turned 20 and my father was 18. So it was like young people do young people stuff. And he ran up there and took her to the hospital. And then I came out a couple of days later. But anyway, just keep me from dragging off. One thing I do want to talk about is, and segueing into Department of Education. I'm going to play this clip. That's basically what's going to happen with the Department of Education. We're cutting the Department of Education fair use.
Republicans have for a long time wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. Ronald Reagan ran on getting rid of the Department of Education right after it was created. So there's a long-held dream of theirs. But the reason it's never happened is because there's never been growth. Because rural communities, as you just said, have benefited from some of the programs that the Department of Education has done. I don't think anyone thinks any of these departments and agencies within the federal government operate with no issues and that everything is all copacetic all the time. Things had to change, but just gutting it completely so much to where they're not really doing anything, that's where you're going to run into the issues, right? There are certain
Sorry.
parts of the Department of Education that are being put in different offices, like he says, the SBA, and HHS is going to have some of the protections and orders of how, children with disabilities operate in schools, those kinds of things is going to be spread around. But then who's going to be doing the work? Because there's an expertise that is in the Department of Education that maybe won't be at the SBA when it comes to student loans or HHS when it comes to like what they receive when they're in school.
That was an MSNBC clip, and it was talking about the effects of education when they're dismantling it and placing it onto other areas. So the functions won't go away, but as the speaker was saying, who's going to do the work? If I send an electrician to look at your plumbing, yeah, they might get a little bit of it, but that's not who you need for that job. One of the things they talk about what the Department of Education does. They give Title I funding. What is Title I funding? Title I funding is funding if 50% of your students receive free breakfast, free lunch. The federal government sends extra funds to supplement education aid, special needs, things of that nature to help give your school the extra help it needs to get out of the Title I status eventually. Also, they handle a lot of the special needs, special education, equal opportunity, and of course, dealing with the American with Disabilities Act. Those things, if moved to HHS, our Secretary of the Health and Human Services thinks that sunlight kills measles. I know better, but I guess I ain't rich enough. But let me go to Ms. Kim. You worked in the education system, and you've done those. You've seen Title I schools. What do you think? What do you think? Um, Getting rid of the Department of Education will affect schools like where you came from, Statesboro, Bullock County, Portal.
I worked in a Title I school, so it's gonna hurt a lot with the, I feel like with the free lunch, with a lot of students that get the free lunch, because a lot of the parents do not work, and it's a very low income area that I worked in, and excuse me, I'm not feeling well right now, but I lost my train of thought. It's a
You were working in a place that the parents didn't work, so it was very poor.
Yeah, the parents and where a lot of them lived off SNAP and TANF, which what I do now. And or either they didn't get, and it also helped with the school that I worked in. The school provided in the summertime the Feed a Kid program. So I think that's gonna hurt those types of schools. And with these kids that get these certain, federal aid, not federal aids, but the Title I school that get the aids they need to take care of the kids in the school. A lot of them gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt by it.
I agree with that. I agree with that because as Apple and Chocolate Pearl can attest, we were we were there every day during the summer. Basic in New York, they used to call it summer free lunch, and people
We kind of made it fun. We kind of made it fun going there.
like, yeah, people used to clown us like if you got free lunch and you lived in the projects, and that just says yeah, that kind of goes hand in hand. But back in the 80s when people were still working, 70s, 80s when people were still working, that was looked down upon by your peers. So we understand. Trust me, we understand. I definitely understand. Reduced and free lunch
Child,
for.
I understood it. Didn't care what nobody else thought about it, and went always try to get there late when it was almost about to be over, so we can get the leftovers to bring home.
Yep.
Y'all could be shamed if you want to. I was eating.
Yeah. And then with the school I worked in, they also hosted summer school. So the summer meal program helped those kids because a lot of times the kids that came from the low income home, a lot of times the parents were selling the
The
SNAP
food stamps.
benefits,
Hmm.
for other things that they weren't supposed to be, just to have money in their pocket. So a lot of times I always worried about the kids, like, are they eating, during the summertime? Because
Yeah,
I
and
mainly
that's the
work with
thing.
first and second graders.
And that's the
But see,
thing. It's
that's what the Michelle Obama has why she started. She was so adamant about the types of food that was being fixed at the schools and wanted to make sure that the kids had fresh vegetables or fresh
Yeah.
fruit, ingredients for them to eat a nutritious meal and not just a supplement in a sense, just throwing something together for the kids to eat. At least they're growing and they're getting the nutrients that they need to grow. But now it's getting to the point where, like you said, if they remove all of those benefits, what's going to happen to these kids now? I think the parents is going to have to step up and do what they're supposed to do and be a parent. But because we didn't train, or a lot of this newer generation, we didn't train our kids to be parents.
Mm-hmm.
We train them to be lazy and selfish and feel that the world owes them everything. So they're not going to learn how to survive like they need to. They're going to get a crash course, of course, but we were kind of taught. We were and our parents were taught how to maintain a household even with a small income and stuff like that. And like I said, like my brother said, we grew up on free lunch and summer school lunches and stuff like that. Like I said, I laughed about it, but I was dead serious. I was never ashamed of it. Well, I personally was never ashamed of it. I would make sure I would go towards the end. and when you go towards the end, whatever's left over, you can get the last. And I used to take that home. I used to always try to make sure I had a shopping bag with me so I can take that home with me. So that way, when, especially on the weekends, because it was closed on the weekends. So, and I don't think we got fed on Fridays. So you got fed Monday through Thursday, and on Friday and Friday through Sunday, you didn't get nothing. So, but I made sure my household had something.
Yeah, and that's why when I moved up and started working with, which was the OTJTPA program, which is now WeOA, and I started working with high school students, and I gave them their first job because a lot of them came from single parent household. If the parent was in the household, most of the time the parent wasn't working, or the parent was working and drinking or using drugs. So the
Right.
kids was able to go finally get their first job, and they started working. I would put them at the library at the age of 14, 15. And the others that could get a work permit, I will help them get the work permit and taught them how to go on the interview, dress for success and all that. I did that for over 13 years with these teenagers, ages 14 to on up to young adults. And I think that's why I stayed in it so long, because the majority of the people that I did work with was in the Black community. And I helped them to be able to learn how to get a job, earn their own money, manage their money. Now, everybody wasn't successful in it. Some do fall off, but I think that's why I had a love for what I did, because a lot of the kids in the household came from broken home families, and they didn't have a lot. I mean, I would go down in the trenches, just to get them up, take them on a job interview. Back then, where I came from, you could do that. Now, I wouldn't try to here, but where I came from, yes. And that's why I stayed in that so long.
That's really, that's good. And that's kind of what we'll probably go back to once we get to segregation separation. We'll probably wind up, taking care of our own. And that's kind of what we probably need. And instead of laying over and rolling over, we're not going to do that anymore, and be able to help not only ourselves, but our progeny and their kids, because we're almost at the age of where we can be grandparents.
I am one.
Miss Dream, I know you driving. What's going on with you? Well, she must be listening. She's driving anyway. But let me go. Hey, Pearl. On what you see on the screen now is the World Population Review website, and it talks about how much the states spend per person. With a thing with the Department of Education is that